Welcome to chapter 19 of the book of 1 Kings. Elijah continues, the prophet, and he had the prophets of Baal killed after God came down and sent his fire upon the altar to Baal, and the people saw that Baal was not God, but the God of Israel, and they killed all the prophets of Baal by the instructions of Elijah. But now it continues, and Ahab, that was the king, announced of Samaria, the northern tribes, he announced to Jezebel, that's Jezebel in the English, his wife, all as much as Elias did. And as he killed the prophets by the broadsword, the prophets of Baal. And Jezebel sent to Elian, as the Greek words, and said, "Thus may the gods do to me, and thus may they add, that this hour tomorrow I shall put your life as one life from out of them, as dead." And Elijah feared. Phobia, when you see the Phi Omicron Vita. He feared, which is not unusual when you're threatened. I look at what's going on in the United States today at the end of 2020, of the possibility of Christians being persecuted in the future because of the young people don't believe in God. They have been brought up in the public government-run institutions and have not been taught about God. No more Christian schools. The churches are all closed. And so I see where there's a good chance that there will be persecution of Christians coming soon. A lot of preachers have preached, if you become a Christian, everything is going to be great. But it might not be, and here when he sees or hears the threat of Jezebel, he fears. And that's pretty common. I think we would fear also if being a Christian and you heard somebody's killing Christians, and they were, you would fear. It would be natural. And he rose up and went forth for his life, save his life. And he came unto Beersheba, which is further south, almost to the southern border of Israel at that time, and that was down in Judah. And Ahab was up in the northern kingdom, so Elijah would have thought himself to be fairly safe down here because Ahab couldn't come down into Judah. And he was there. He left his servant lad there in Beersheba. And he went by the wilderness a day, doesn't say which direction, but anything south or east or west would pretty much been desert, wilderness. And he came and stayed underneath a broom shrub. And these were growing all over. And we have them in Oregon where I'm at. It's sort of a wild weed. I think it has like a yellow bloom on it. They grow around on the roads here and all over. And he asked for his life to die. I suppose if you're looking at persecution in the face, you might think that, well, that's the easy way out. I have a friend that's sees the horrible things going, is hoping for the rapture, which I can understand. You want to be saved from seeing all the things that are bad or experiencing it. But he said, "It is fit now, O Lord, take indeed my life from me." The imperative, take it from me. "For I am not better than my fathers." Now, I'm not exactly sure what he means by that. It was the fathers like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, but are his fathers in his family. And he bedded down and slept there under a plant. And behold, a certain angelos, an angel, touched him. And this reminds me of Peter being touched in the prison. He was sleeping, and just as Elijah is here, and the angel pushes him, touches him, and it says to him, rise up and eat. Well, the one with Peter said to get up and put your clothes on, we're going to go out. And he looked, and behold, by his head was a cake baked in hot ashes of oaten bread, and a jar of water. And Elijah rose up and ate and drank, and he returned and went back to bed. So, angel bringing food to you must be good. I always wonder about, when I'm cooking fish, I sometimes don't do it very good, and I'm thinking, well, Jesus was an expert at cooking fish, cooked it along the Sea of Galilee, but last part of the book of John, and prayed to the Lord, show me how to cook this fish. You're the expert. So he went back to bed. And the angel of the Lord returned from a second time, Deutero. We have Deuteronomy, the second law. And he touched him again, and he said to him, rise up and eat, for the journey is great for you. Doesn't say how long he slept, but get up. And he rose up and ate and drank, so it was probably a little bit later, and went in the strength of that food 40 days and 40 nights unto Mount Horeb. This reminds me of Jesus going 40 days and 40 nights without food and water. And I believe Moses also, when he was on Mount Sinai, which was in the mountains of Horeb, which are actually just tall hills. So this would have been east of Beersheba towards Egypt. And it was wilderness there. And he entered there into the cave, spelunkers, and cave explorers, and he rested up there. And behold, a word of the Lord came to him and said, why are you here, O Elijah? And Elijah said, well, being zealous. I'm zealous for the Lord Almighty. Pantokrator, all pan and krat, might, Almighty. For the sons of Israel abandoned you, and your altar they razed, and your prophets they killed by the broadsword. And I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it. It's pretty bad, God. There's not very many of us left, and they're killing us, tearing down your altars. Today I look at, I mentioned in the last chapter how they tore down church in Russia after the Soviet Union became a state, made atheism the state policy. So he's looking at everything, again, bad. They're seeking my life. And he said, God, you shall go forth, and stand before the Lord in the mountain. Could have been the same area that Moses was in. He was in Horeb. And behold, the Lord will go by. And he's waiting for a manifestation of God, something probably wonderful, beautiful, loud, strong. And there was a strong wind, and parting the mountains, knocking things over, huge wind. I live in the Oregon coast, and I was in a 105-mile-an-hour wind. It blew the top off of a restaurant on the Highway 101. This would have been, by God, a strong wind, scary, and breaking rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the pneumati. He was not in the wind. Well, was looking around. And then the wind, after the wind, there was a rumbling like an earthquake. And the Lord was not in the rumbling, so everything is shaking where he's at. The mountains, he can worry about things falling down, coming down on him from the cliffs and so forth. And everything is just shaking, and all of a sudden he's expecting, well, this is God now. And after the rumbling, but he wasn't there. After the rumbling, a fire And then all of a sudden it calms down, and then all of a sudden a fire rises up, and you see this giant, like a forest fire. It was in the mountains, all this dry brush and everything. It was just like a hurricane of fire. But the Lord was not in the fire. Looking at all these things, nothing happened. And after the fire, the sound of a fine breeze, a little breeze, and there was the Lord. The Lord is in the strength, and the Lord is in what may be perceived as weakness, but it's not really weakness with him. We can perceive it as a weakness if God isn't doing something great in our lives or around us, to the people and so forth. Where's God? And then there's this fine breeze, and you don't think about God being in something that's very common or nice and calming, but that's where he was. He's there for us. If we look and see, we don't have to look far, because he's active in our lives in a way that is not necessarily always something dynamic happening. So it came to pass, as Elijah heard, that he covered his face with his sheepskin, and he went forth, and he stood by the cave. And that goes out. And behold, before him was a voice or a sound, and said, "Why are you here, Elijah?" Again. And Elijah said, "Well, being zealous, I'm zealous for the Lord God Almighty, for you. For the sons of Israel abandoned your covenant. It's got word. Your altars they raised, and your prophets they killed by the broadsword. And I alone am left, and they seek my life to take it." Same thing. And the Lord said to him, "Go, return to your journey, and you shall come unto the way of the wilderness of Damascus." Now this was all the way up north, further than Samaria, up into Syria of today. So he goes from the southernmost part of Israel up to the northernmost part of Israel today. "And you shall anoint Azazel, Hazel, as king over Syria, and Ehud," because O-U, Omicron, Epsilon, U, Ehud, son of Nimshi, you shall anoint as king over Israel, the northern kingdom. "And Elisha, the son of Shaphat, from out of Abel Meolah, you shall anoint as prophet instead of you." Prophetin, prophet, transliteration. Now he's given the instructions of what he's to do. God has given it to him. "And it will be the one being delivered from the broadsword of Hazael, the king of Syria, whoever he comes against, Jehu shall put to death. And the one being delivered from the broadsword of Jehu, Elisha shall put to death." And we'll find out how this all comes about later. "And I shall leave behind in Israel 7,000 men, all knees which bend not to the knee of Baal." Now, I don't know how many people are in the United States or in the world that are following God. I know for a fact of people coming to the website of apostolicbible.com that every day I get somebody someplace in the world registering for the free downloads. And then generally once a day, somebody orders a printed edition or other things. And they're from all over the world, but nobody from one place. I'm thinking, well, gee, that's kind of strange. I mean, you'd think maybe some Bible college would be interested in the Bible like it is to teach the Greek to the young men. No, it's just individuals that God have brought. A friend of mine, he thinks that, well, maybe I'm not doing the right thing as far as promoting it. But how do you promote something that's people are all over the world, but there's not that many that are that interested? You could put an advertisement on CNN, spend millions of dollars. You might end up 5 people calling you up. And but God knows who they are. And so he's showing Elijah that he's telling him these 7,000 men. Now, Elijah doesn't know who they are, but God knows, and he's showing them, and God shows me that there are people that are interested. Write me and so forth. And every mouth which does not do obeisance to him. And he went forth from there and finds Elisha, son of Shaphat. And he was plowing with oxen. 12 teams were before him. That's interesting. It reminds me of the time Jesus went up to the Sea of Galilee and chose his disciples, 12 disciples. And they were working with the nets, catching fish. But here Elijah catches Elisha. And he was there. He was among the 12 teams of oxen. That's a lot of oxen. And Elijah went forth unto Elisha and tossed upon him his sheepskin, his coat. And Elisha left the oxen just as Peter and James and John left their father, Zebedee. And he ran after Elijah and said, well, I shall kiss my father and my mother, and I shall follow after you. And he, Elijah, said to him, go, return, for I have done it to you. Now, a young man came to Jesus, and Jesus told him about a person that was plowing a field, doesn't look back to see what he's done because he'll, the plow, they're aiming it, and if you look back, all of a sudden you're going to be off track. But Elijah didn't say that here. He just says he's done what God has told him to do. And he, Elisha, returned from following after him and took the teams of oxen, and he sacrificed, slew them, and cooked them with the equipment of the oxen, the plows, the wooden plows, and everything, and gave to the people, and they ate. And he rose up and went after Elijah and ministered to him. So off goes Elijah, and then Elisha does these things and goes and finds Elijah and follows his mentor, Elijah. Chapter 20, we get into the interesting story with Syria waging war with King Ahab up in the north, and what happens and how the prophet's involved. So I hope you join us in Chapter 20, our next video seminar. And till then, God bless.